Well, welcome back to Stand on Guard. That wasn't much of a break, was it? Thank you for joining me today for the live coverage of Mark Carney's swearing in ceremony at Rideau Hall. We're just listening. I'm listening in to make sure we don't miss anything. This is a selection. It was not an election. It was a selection. And this is an installation of a globalist supreme. Mark Carney is China's man. There is no question about that. This is a man who has spent his entire adult life working for globalist causes. He's worked for the World Economic Forum. He's worked for the United Nations. He's founded NGOs that are all about forcing companies and corporations to adopt net zero policies, one of which was cited as a climate cartel. So, there's plenty of mystery surrounding Mark Carney. That's only because people haven't looked very closely. And we have been doing that in a major deep dive on our Substack page. And I'm going to read some of what we've done recently about the Chinese connection. Because the question we ask, and like I say, we will be going to the ceremony as soon as it starts. I'm listening. And they're still milling about here. But does Mark Carney want to tank the US dollar? Because if we look at two speeches, it sure looks that way. It's interesting what Liz Truss had to say about this. She says another impartial British bureaucrat goes into left-wing politics. And that another left-wing bureaucrat goes into left-wing politics. At the Bank of England, Carney backed ruinous net zero policies and money printing. The British state is completely rigged. A new government in 2029 needs to dismantle the apparatus. And of course, Liz Truss, who was on this program about 2 weeks ago to talk about Mark Carney and her efforts to bring some sanity back to the British Conservative Party, thinks Mark Carney will be ruinous for Canada. This is a man who has got considerable issues. And there he is with the dictator of China. The more we learn about Mark Carney, the less we trust him or believe anything he says. The more that Mark Carney tells Canadians that steel is no longer a relevant commodity in their lives, the greater the realization that this is a man who is utterly detached not only from ordinary Canadians, but perhaps from reality itself.
But the large polluters pay. And so what happens?
But does that not ultimately trickle down?
No, because what the big companies are producing, by and large, are not products that we are consuming. There's some element of that, but by and large, a steel company, how much steel are you using these days, Todd? I mean, not as much we used. So anyway, so that's how much steel are you using these days, Todd?
Yeah, how much steel are you using these days, Todd? Well, sorry, we're still using steel. And of course, he had that photo op at a steel plant looking very uncomfortable. He reminded me of Mike Dukakis when he was running for president in the United States, when he went to visit the military base and put on the tank helmet. Looks completely uncomfortable. But, Mark Carney is very close to China. And Carney has not had anything resembling an ordinary life since he left high school. And he entered Harvard University and then went on to Oxford, where he did his master's and his PhD. He has been systematically trained and groomed by the globalist cabal to insert himself into foreign governments, just as the World Economic Forum chief Klaus Schwab likes to describe his attack on democracy and national autonomy by penetrating the cabinets. So Klaus Schwab, Carney has become the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada through the back door in a race that reeked of corruption and gross irregularity, with 400,000 members joining 2/3 of the ballots and two popular candidates kicked out of the race. So 2/3 of the membership got disqualified. He expected to be sworn in as the Prime Minister of Canada on March 14th, 2025. Justin Trudeau's handlers, which are now Carney's handlers, have planted him in Canada on the border of the United States, which geographically is integrated into the U.S. economy and military. Carney is not just symptomatic of the globalist elites who tell you to eat bugs and own nothing and you'll be happy. Carney is emblematic of these parasites who grow richer at your expense by telling you to abide by rules to live by that they joyfully ignore. As the chairman of Brookfield Assets Management, Carney enthusiastically invested in fossil fuels while running around the world as a climate change spokesman, goodwill ambassador for climate change for the United Nations, and became a virtual spokesman for the net zero policies that are only arbitrary fabrications and utterly toxic to Canada's gas and oil industry, which he will now have to support to some degree, won't he? His company paid on average less than 5% corporate taxes and sheltered potentially hundreds of millions of dollars in Bermuda. So during the Trudeau years, Mark Carney company was paying 5% corporate tax. You see some favoritism there? You know, the old offshore shell game works for hypocritical liberals who want to pay more tax, want you to pay more tax to fight climate change, but no, it's all a sham. And besides, it's all about the profit margin for them and their shareholders. But what is emerging now is a clear picture of Carney as such an enthusiastic advocate of communist China that he might be called the Manchurian candidate. And if you haven't seen that film, there's two versions. The first one with Frank Sinatra and Angela Lansbury is the better one. But it's all about how North Korea, during the Korean War and in China, trained, brainwashed American GIs behind the lines, sent them back to the United States to do their bidding. As the United Nations Special Envoy for Climate Change and co-chair of the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, that's GFANZ, Carney actually expressed optimism that China, with all of its coal consumption and production of gas-guzzling automobiles, could be a world leader on green energy and net zero. China has made a huge contribution to the fight against climate change, not only in terms of its massive investment in clean technologies and exporting them to other countries, but also in actively developing the financial system needed for the green transition, he said. The U.S. House Judiciary Committee called GFANZ, this NGO of his, a climate cartel. And I said, this climate cartel has declared war on the American way of life. The climate cartel is waging a global world war for net zero against disfavored American companies, including those in the fossil fuel, aviation, and farming industries that allow Americans to drive, fly, and eat. This is what Mark Carney is all about. I'm just checking to see if we're not missing anything. But it's, yeah, they're late as usual. But not as well known is Mark Carney's desire to replace the United States dollar as the world currency of choice. He wants to replace it with the Chinese yuan, or renminbi, as he likes to call it. Perhaps because nobody knows what the heck a renminbi is. I have been arguing for many years that it would be more beneficial for the global system if our reserve currency system could be richer and more accurately reflect the weight of the Chinese economy and the global economy, given the rise of the Chinese economy. Is that a little bit of double talk from Mark Carney? And he said that at the China Development Forum. He went on to say, it is good that the Chinese currency has become the global reserve currency. He pointed out that to enhance the renminbi, or let's just say the yuan status as a reserve currency, expanding its international use will be one of the most important factors. Carney has also said this before at the Jackson Hole Economic Symposium in 2019. Carney advocated for both the Chinese currency and also a new synthetic hegemonic currency to be used to replace the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. He calls that the SHC. And you wonder what the heck that is? You're not the only one. Does it make any sense? No. But it sounds to me like a digital currency. This is where Mark Carney is moving us towards digital currency. Justin Trudeau was going in the same direction. Mark Carney will double speed how fast we go into this. We're just about ready for the ceremony to start. Here's what he said at the Jackson Hole speech. Now the United States economy is doing better than most, pushing the dollar higher. Smaller countries are suffering more than they should. Trump's tariffs on imports from China and elsewhere are adding to the dollar's strength as well, making matters even worse. Even worse. This is why he's picking fights with Donald Trump already. He's been doing that for years. This is what this man is all about. And the most likely candidate for true reserve currency status, the renminbi, has a long way to go before it is ready to assume the mantle. The initial building blocks are there. Already, China is the world's leading trading nation, overtaking the U.S. at the start of this decade. And the renminbi is now more common than sterling oil future benchmarks, despite having no shares in the market prior to 2018. As a consequence, it is an open question whether such a new synthetic hegemonic currency would be best provided by the public sector, perhaps through a network of central bank digital currencies. Even if the initial variants of the idea proved wanting, the concept is intriguing. It is worth considering how an SHC and the could better support global outcomes given the scale of the challenges of the current situation. So we're a minute away from things starting here. So I'm going to end there. We're going to go and I'm going to make some comments while we're here. So we're waiting for this to begin. It's literally seconds away. I'm hearing, but interesting to see who has not been included in the Carney cabinet. We already know this, of course. Stephen Guilbeault, Environment and Climate Change Minister, is not returning. He's as the minister. He's coming back as a Quebec lieutenant, which of course is something Carney needs very well because his French is abominable. And when he debates in French, he says a lot of really crazy things. So, and of course, Karina Gould, I found that interesting. She's not in the cabinet at all in any shape or form. And Karina Gould, of course, is the same cabinet minister when she was House Leader, government House Leader, who was instrumental in inviting the former SS member, Yaroslav Hunka, to a space of honor in the gallery to listen to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's speech. And he got, what, 3 standing ovations? And of course, you've all seen the picture of Karina Gould standing with the then speaker, Anthony Rota, and Hunka seated. And I think We're just about ready to go here.
As the ceremony is now underway.
Cell phones are turned to silent mode. Thank you. Bonjour et soyez les bienvenus à Rideau Hall. Avant de commencer la cérémonie, j'aimerais vous informer que notre photographe officiel prendra des photos lors de l'événement et qu'elles vous seront partagées dans les jours à venir. Par conséquent, je vous demanderai de ne pas prendre de photos pendant la cérémonie. J'aimerais également vous rappeler d'éteindre la sonnerie de vos téléphones cellulaires. Merci. The ceremony will now begin with the entrance of the Clerk of the Privy Council and Secretary to the Cabinet, John Hannaford, the Secretary to the Governor-General, Ken McKillop, and the Assistant Clerk of the Privy Council, Jana Rinaldi. La cérémonie débutera maintenant avec l'arrivée du greffier du Conseil privé et secrétaire du Cabinet, John Hannaford, du secrétaire de la gouverneure générale, Ken McKillop, et de la greffière adjointe du Conseil privé, Jana Rinaldi.
And of course, these things take forever. And it took long enough to start. They were about 15 minutes late. But apparently the Carney cabinet is going to be half the size, the Liberal,
To begin
of the
today's
Trudeau
swearing-in
cabinet.
ceremony, I invite you to please rise to welcome the ministers, ministers-designate, the Prime Minister-designate, and their excellencies, the Governor-General of Canada, and Mr. Whit Fraser. Pour débuter la cérémonie, veuillez vous lever pour accueillir les ministres désignés, le Premier ministre désigné, et leurs excellences, le Gouverneur général du Canada, et Mr. Whit Fraser.
There's, of course, Mark Carney has arrived.
Please be seated. Veuillez vous asseoir. Merci. Good morning, everybody. My name's Ken McKillop, and I'm the Secretary to the Governor-General. I would like to welcome everybody to Rideau Hall today for the swearing-in of the 24th Prime Minister of Canada and the 30th Canadian Ministry. I'd like to take a moment to share with you a traditional activity that was initiated just prior to the beginning of the ceremony, the lighting of the hulik, a traditional Inuit lamp. This lamp is used in the north to bring light and warmth to the home. We light the hulik to mark important events such as today's ceremony. And we are grateful for the presence of Elder Canon Iga Atakutsiak from Arctic Bay, who lit the hulik and will remain and maintain its light and warmth throughout the ceremony. Nakumik. J'aimerais maintenant inviter l'aîné algonquin Vernon McGregor à prononcer ces mots de bienvenue.
Kwe kakina. Bonjour tout le monde. Hello, everybody. Very honored to be here today, and I'd like to welcome you to our traditional unceded lands here, and I'm very honored, Your Excellency.
I am so sick of this process, this stupid procedure. Nonsense.
Here, but I always talk about the significance here because this is so special for us as Algonquin. We're known as the Mamaninawak, the nomads, and we're known for the birch bark canoe. And we would meet here in the summer prior to contact to talk about what's going on the land. But this confluence here is very special because it represents balance of the four directions, the four seasons, the four stages of your life. And so, and I find it interesting that Parliament and Rideau Hall and all the government headquarters are located here, because I think this is special too as well for leadership. And I'm honoring the new leader today too as well. And I was thinking about you today, I said it's like the geese, and you have the head, the person at the head, Gani Ganich, and they face the head waters. And I think we're in
Mark,
for
you
all
look like
these
you were about to.
challenges, but even more
yeah,
so
it was a tell.
today.
As a European,
So
you know, as a
European, I
honorary
am a
European.
European, actually.
Oh, you are?
Yeah,
Oh.
Irish
And
citizen.
thanking
Yeah.
everybody.
So there you go.
Welcome. Welcome.
Speaking as a European, I'd like to say the following.
Mark, you look like you were about to.
Yeah, it was a tell.
As a European, you know, as a
European, I am a
European.
European, actually.
Oh, you are?
Yeah,
Oh.
an Irish citizen. Yeah. So
Oh,
there you
welcome.
go.
Welcome.
Speaking as a European, I'd like to say the following.
Nipi a shit in the Mishomsanon, keys is on Jay Nagadawabdan, Kakina Gutia, Pamad Sajik and Iswa Gonshe, Miguetonche in the Sewin, Kaki Mijin, Chimino Pamad Siano She. We doka Kakinan, Gino and Daganak, the Mishomsanon, the Gokmisnan, the shit in the Don, and is Oshe no Gomonje, the Bashka Dagma, Kamashed, and Iswa.
Do you believe this? I'm sorry, but do you believe this is going on in a Canadian ceremony? Is this what this country has come to? We have to submit to this. Do we have 3 official languages now in Canada? Oh, this is just beyond belief.
We come from spirit and we return back to spirit. We come from the earth, we return back to the earth. And in my prayer, what I'm saying is I'm thanking everybody to coming together here. And always a reminder too, as well, to look after the earth. Because again, one of the teachings is that we were all given the original instructions to look after the earth, because we all share the earth, we share the water, we share the air and the fire.
What a charade this is. What a circus this country has become. It's bad enough we have to proclaim every little square inch of land in this country belonging to somebody else, but to put up with this, just beyond belief. Yeah, I can see everybody else is upset about this as I am.
Thank you, Elder McGregor. Merci, Andy McGregor. Mr. John Hannaford, the Clerk of the Privy Council and the Secretary to the Cabinet, will now seek the Governor-General's consent for the administration of the Oath of Allegiance, the Privy Councillor's Oath, and the Oath of Office to the Prime Minister-Designate.
Excellency, the Prime Minister-Designate has accepted your invitation to form a new government and is prepared to be sworn in. Excellence, le Premier Ministre désigné a accepté votre invitation de former le gouvernement et est disposé à servir le serment.
The Prime Minister-Designate will please come forward to be sworn in. Le Premier Ministre désigné est prié de s'avancer pour prêter serment. Mr. Mark Carney, Mr. Mark Carney.
Moi, Mark Carney, je jure fidélité et sincère allégeance à Sa Majesté le roi Charles III, roi du Canada, à ses héritiers et successeurs. I, Mark Carney, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty, King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors. Moi, Mark Carney, je jure solennellement et sincèrement que j'agirai en fidèle et loyal serviteur de Sa Majesté le roi Charles III, en ma qualité de membre du Conseil privé de Sa Majesté pour le Canada. J'exprimerai fidèlement, honnêtement et en toute vérité mon sentiment et mon opinion sur toute chose traitée, débattue et résolue en Conseil. Je tiendrai secret tout ce qui me confie ou révélé en cette qualité, tout ce dont il sera traité secrètement en Conseil. J'agirai en toutes circonstances comme il convient à une fidèle et loyale serviteur de Sa Majesté. I, Mark Carney, do solemnly and sincerely swear that I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada. I will, in all things, to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council, faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be secretly treated of in council. Generally, in all things I shall do as a faithful and true servant ought to do for His Majesty. Moi, Mark Carney, je promets et jure solennellement et sincèrement qu'au mieux de ma compétence et de ma connaissance, j'écouterai loyalement et fidèlement les pouvoirs et je m'acquitterai des responsabilités qui m'ont été confiées en qualité de Premier ministre. I, Mark Carney, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trust reposed in me as Prime Minister.
Yeah, this is a guy elected by 150,000 people, installed as the prime minister by a globalist cabal, and he has an agenda that's.
The oath books to formally witness the swearing in of the Prime Minister, but they're also signing the instruments of advice nominating the new Canadian ministry.
Yeah, that's it. Finding your comments extremely interesting as I'm reading them as they go down here.
Congratulations, Prime Minister.
What a clown show. You know, the U.S. inauguration showed how it should be done. You don't drag up some indigenous woman to lecture people on how they've been disenfranchised. Yeah. How you're standing on their land It has become a gross distortion of a
Maintenant que la
democratic
gouvernante
country.
générale a signifié son approbation, nous procéderons à l'assermentation du 30e Conseil des ministres canadiens. The ministers and ministers designate will please come forward to be sworn in. Les ministres et les ministres désignés sont priés
Yeah,
de
we'll
s'avancer
go
pour
through this
prêter
too.
serment. L'honorable Dominique Leblanc, ministre du Commerce international et des Affaires intergouvernementales et président du Conseil privé du roi pour le Canada. The Honorable Dominique Leblanc, Minister of International Trade and
Who's
Intergovernmental
finance?
Affairs and President of the King's Privy Council for Canada.
Moi, Dominique Leblanc, je promets et jure solennellement et sincèrement qu'au mieux de ma compétence et de ma connaissance, j'exécuterai loyalement et fidèlement les pouvoirs et je m'acquitterai des responsabilités qui m'ont été confiées en qualité de ministre du Commerce international et des Affaires intergouvernementales et président du Conseil privé du roi pour le Canada. I, Dominic LeBlanc, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of International Trade and Intergovernmental Affairs and President of the King's Privy Council for Canada.
Had to put LeBlanc in there. There's no question about that. And watch who's not there though, and how Carney is straddling the line between not being part of the Trudeau years and being a so-called outsider. It's a strategy that unfortunately a lot of people are buying into. I know you aren't, dear viewer, but a lot of Canadians really are that stupid to think that this guy is somehow a brand new development.
Cet après-midi. The Honorable Melanie Joly, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Development, is unable to join us this morning, but will be sworn in at a later time this afternoon.
Oh.
Maintenant, l'honorable François-Philippe Champagne, Ministre des Finances. The Honorable François-Philippe Champagne, Minister of Finance.
Champagne is finance? Now that's frightening.
Moi, François-Philippe Champagne, je promets et jure solennellement et sincèrement qu'au mieux de ma compétence et de ma connaissance, j'exécuterai loyalement et fidèlement les pouvoirs et je m'acquitterai des responsabilités qui m'ont été confiées en qualité de ministre des Finances. I, François-Philippe Champagne, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trust reposed in me as Minister of Finance. Thank you. Prime Minister.
There it is. The Honorable Indira Anita Anand, Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry. Honorable Indira Anita Anand, Ministre de l'Innovation, des Sciences et l'Industrie.
So
I,
Any
Indira Anita Anand.
bets as to how long this government is going to be around? Maybe a couple of weeks? Maybe 30 days until it's voted out of office.
Fidèlement les pouvoirs et je m'acquitterai des responsabilités qui m'ont été confiées en qualité de ministre de l'Innovation, des Sciences et de l'Industrie.
Now we're not going to watch entirely all of this, but we just want to see what some of the vital cabinet positions have come.
L'honorable William Sterling Blair, ministre de la Défense nationale.
And what have they given Bill Blair? Open Borders Blair is back.
I, William Sterling Blair, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts proposed in me as Minister of National Defence. Thank you, John.
While we have a moment here, I want to show you a couple of clips, and we'll stay abreast of what's happening. But
I noticed this morning already that his first planned international visit is to the European Union. Not good. Not good. We don't have a trade war with the European Union today. We are in the midst of a trade war with the United States of America and China, the two largest economies in the world and our two largest export markets and trading partners. To choose to go to the European Union is beyond what I could understand as being in any way impactful or representing Canadians. And so I would ask Mr. Carney to reconsider that, engage immediately with the Chinese government, continue and engage and lay his plan out with respect to how he is going to engage with the United States of America. And I would suggest that plan should not include anything in the way of export tariffs, because that is very much one of the threats that has been identified by Saskatchewan industry as being one of the 5 tariff-related threats that are going to end jobs for a period of time in this country, and ultimately are not in any way finding our way towards that North American energy and food security goal that Saskatchewan really plays a part in.
That's, of course, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe, who's saying, first of all, why is Mark Carney going to Europe as soon as he gets sworn in, basically? Well, I guess it's St. Patrick's Day, Mark Carney. It's his birthday on Sunday. He's 60 years old. He's going to celebrate it with his friends in the European Union. What do you bet he's going to advocate that Canada become closer to Europe than the United States? That's where Trudeau was going. That's where Trudeau has been going in the last 3 months. Mark Carney, of course, is even better situated than Trudeau to advocate for that position because he's a citizen of 3 countries, 2 of them European, Ireland and the UK. And he called himself a European in the past. And this is what he's advocating for. He wants Canada to be closer to Europe than the United States. And if there's any more surprises in the cabinet here, I'll let you know. But this is why, Scott Moe is also saying, what are you worried about Europe for right now when we've got a conflict with the United States over tariffs, and China has got 100% tariff on fertilizer. Did you know this? 100% tariff on fertilizer in response to our putting a tariff on Chinese vehicles to support our electric vehicle industry that nobody in Canada wants to support anymore. Electric vehicles are like used Edsels in the 1950s. These are useless vehicles. These are cars nobody wants to buy. You can't give them away. And yet farmers are suffering because we're protecting our auto industry in Ontario. Where have we seen this before? This is the history of Canada. This is the history of the way the federal government behaves. Crapping on Western Canada so Central Canada gets its car packed. And this is what's happening now with electric vehicles. We're protecting something that nobody wants to buy, and we're hurting farmers who help us survive. Farmers grow the food so we can live. We cannot survive without farmers, without the food they grow. And they're in danger of losing that ability. So Scott Moe's got a very good point here. We'll go back to this ceremony here for a few minutes. Yes, Wilkinson is still in as energy.
Jeanette Petitpas-Taylor, Présidente du Conseil du Trésor. The Honorable Jeanette Petitpas-Taylor, President of the Treasury Board.
And
moi, Jeanette Petitpas-Taylor, je promets et jure solennellement et sincèrement qu'au mieux de ma compétence et de ma connaissance, j'exécuterai loyalement et fidèlement les pouvoirs qui m'attireraient des responsabilités qui m'ont été confiées en qualité de présidente du Conseil du Trésor.
So no, folks, you're not missing anything yet. I've got another little clip here to show you. And this is another example of the hysteria and authoritarian response that occurs as a result of the so-called trade war that the Liberal government has been fomenting and encouraging and exacerbating with the United States. BC dictator David Eby, the guy who has completely opened the door to drug abuse in the province, now wants special emergency powers, just like Justin Trudeau had, and what Mark Carney has threatened to use.
I wish I could say we could predict what the president is going to do next, but I don't think anyone can predict that. I'm not even sure the president can predict what he's going to do next. And so we need to have the tools in place to be able to respond quickly. This is a significant piece of legislation in that it gives regulation-making authority to government that does not require it to go through the legislature immediately.
Premier, the last part of this bill seems to give you extraordinary powers to do a lot of different things without the legislature. And I'm wondering why you can't just do them through the legislature, keep it running, get it done. You've got a majority government. And when you say we're not going to be at the whim of one man at the White House, have we not set up a system here where the government's sort of at the whim of you, and that he's going to be signing executive orders in the Oval Office, and then we flip to you signing executive orders in the Premier's office, and two democratic systems are bypassed for leaders' orders?
I'll go back to Eby in a minute, but look who's up here.
Quebec Lieutenant.
Stephen Guilbeault is no longer Environment and Climate Change Minister. Why do you think that is? Well, obviously, there's a strategy going on here, and that's for Mark Carney to appear less extreme than Justin Trudeau, more like Pierre Poilievre light. And no, we're not going to have some former Greenpeace activist running the Environment Ministry. We'll put him someplace a little safer. And Carney's strategy here is to look like he's really quite moderate. And of course, Guilbeault once said he would resign if the carbon tax was taken away. And Carney says he's going to replace the individual, the personal carbon tax, with a corporate carbon tax. Well, is that good enough for Stephen Guilbeault?
The Honourable Chrystia Freeland,
Apparently.
Minister of Transport and Internal Trade. L'Honorable Chrystia Freeland, Ministre du Transport et du Commerce Intérieur.
So Freeland is back in the cabinet. I wanted to stay alive for this one. She's smiling just like she's happy birthday, Chris. No, it's actually it's actually Carney's birthday this weekend, not yours.
Truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of Transport and Internal Trade. Moi, Chrystia Freeland, Je promets et jure solennellement et sincèrement qu'au mieux de ma compétence et de ma connaissance, j'exécuterai loyalement et
One
fidèlement
question,
les
one
pouvoirs et
follow-up.
je m'acquitterai des responsabilités qui m'ont été confiées en qualité de ministre des Transports et du Commerce intérieur.
You get the feeling this was all set up from the very beginning. That she resigned from the Trudeau cabinet just so Mark Carney could become prime minister. She set the dominoes in action. I mean, he's the godfather of one of her children, for goodness sakes. They're very close. This has been a big game from day one to get this guy installed. Trudeau's time was up. His best before date had passed. It was time to get Mark Carney in. And they got him in through the back door.
Put on this planet to do this.
I, Gamal Kara, do solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trust reposed in me.
Interesting to note that there's over 20 members of parliament and cabinet who are not running again in the next federal election. Mark Holland just announced, of course, he is Mr. Euthanasia, Dr. Death, who has been overseeing that medical assistance in dying program so fondly and so proudly. He's not running again. Very, very strange. Remember, he said one time that he could die tomorrow, so he doesn't want to speculate about anything. I think Mark was going through some real problems. Maybe that's what happens when you oversee euthanasia in this country. It's highly probable, but there's a lot of them are not running, and of course, Varani, the justice minister, is not running. All right, I'm sticking around for this because this is the new justice minister. And fortunately, Bill C-63, the Online Harms Act, died with the prorogation of Parliament. So I don't think they're going to be able to bring that back or resuscitate it in time for it to ever even get to second reading again.
I, Gary Anandasangari, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trust reposed in me as Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada and Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs. As Minister of Justice, I will see that the administration of public affairs is in accordance with the law. As Attorney General of Canada, I will uphold the Constitution, the rule of law, and the independence of the judiciary and of the prosecutorial function. Moi, Gary Anandasangari, je promets et jure, solemnement et sincèrement, comme mieux de ma compétence et ma conscience, j'exécuterai loyalement et fidèlement le pouvoir et je m'acquitterai des responsabilités qui m'ont été confiées en qualité de ministre de la Justice et procureur général du Canada et ministre des Relations couronnes-autochtones et des Affaires du Nord. En tant que ministre de Justice,
more classic French being read for you here. So this is much smaller cabinet. Who can tell you that? It's about half the size of Justin Trudeau's cabinet. What do you think the message is there? Well, obviously, the message there is that Mark Carney, once again, he's a different kind of liberal. He wants a smaller kind of government. And we saw this before with Paul Martin. He had a much smaller cabinet than his predecessor, Jean Chrétien. And it works for a couple of weeks until people realize, hey, the guy's no different. And he could come back after the next election. God forbid that he could win. and he could double the size of his cabinet. This is all about optics right now, folks. All about optics. And that is what is going on here. This is all about showing you what Mark Carney wants you to see. The sleight of hand going on here.
Valdez, Chief Government Whip. Chief Valdez,
And I'm not going to be showing much more of this because we've seen the major players, and it's interesting that Karina Gould's not there.
Mabuhay.
Christy Freeland's back.
I, Richie Valdez, do solemnly and sincerely.
Oh, there she goes. Here she's going. She's going to cry again. Oh, it's enough to.
As Chief Government Whip.
Oh yeah, it's so emotional.
Moi, Richie Valdez, je promets et jure solennellement et sincèrement que, mieux de ma compétence et ma connaissance, j'exécuterai loyalement et fidèlement les pouvoirs.
And have you noticed how the mainstream media is once again rallying around the Liberal Party? They've done it. They've gotten over the hump. They're out of the wilderness. They're going to win this time. Mark Carney has saved them. It's the same story we heard with Justin Trudeau. And once again, it's a different Liberal Party. It's a new Liberal Party. It's a rejuvenated Liberal Party. It's your Liberal Party. And why are they saying this? Because the mainstream media, of course, gets subsidized to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars from this Trudeau government. And you can bet the Carney government is going to do exactly the same thing. And that's what today is all about, giving you the optics that they want you to see. I think it was a huge mistake.
Other tariffs that are
do
being
that little
levied on
demonstration.
Canadian agriculture products in this products in this sense. Over the weekend, China said that it would impose counter tariffs to the EV ones that we put on back in the summer. Is your government thinking about considering removing any tariffs on China? Any of those EV tariffs, for example?
We're not.
You will not.
We're not.
Even given the issues with the United States right now, there's no second guessing our posture towards trade with China at this moment?
Well, I would say not with respect to the tariffs that we put, because there was a good reasons. We would say we would never be a backdoor to cheap Chinese vehicles, which are overly subsidized and where they don't respect labor law and environmental laws. I mean, there's a reasons why they're dumping steel in North America, and you see these cheap vehicles coming here. We want to protect our industry. We want to protect our workers. We want to protect our communities. And the reasons why we imposed the tariff in the first place still remain very valid today, because we want to protect our industry. And the problem.
So no big opening to China at this moment, like one premier has essentially called for a rethink of that.
I would say with respect to the tariffs we put, there was a very, very specific reason. Okay. And I think people understood that well. And the last thing you would want is my point is, it's a bigger thing. If you look at the force as opposed to three, you said, let's establish rules. If everyone respects the rules, I know we win. The problem now is that on this case, you have China who does not respect the rules, and therefore they're dumping products here and cheap products, and therefore that would be hurting our Canadian economy and industry. So we're going to stand strong. We're going to stand firm. We're going to fight for Canadian interests. And honestly, our mission is to, like I said, we cannot allow uncertainty to become the new certainty in North America, because it goes to undermine our competitiveness in North America, and that's going to affect our national security over the long term. And I think that message is now resonating in Washington.
And that was our new finance minister speaking there. So that's where we are with policy in this new Carney government. Not going to fight this. No, thank you. China is hitting Canada with 100% tariffs on canola oil and peas, and 25% tariffs on pork and aquatic products. That's where we are. This is hitting farmers hard, but like I said, not important to a Liberal government that really doesn't care about farmers. They do care a lot about, and let's get back to this for a minute here. And if we can get back to the ceremony for a minute, McGuinty stays on as public safety minister. He has been a disaster as public safety minister, failing utterly to satisfy any of the needs of border security, not just Donald Trump's needs, but Canada's needs. He has been an abject failure at fixing the border. There's no problem, he keeps saying. David McGuinty says there's no problem. What's the issue here? He has been a complete cipher. And he's staying in under Mark Carney as public safety minister. And this is another confirmation I wanted to see. Getting pretty well near the end of the major players. So I'm not going to keep this going too much longer because I know it's tortuous to watch the Liberals at play. I hope this is their last kick at the can. Sarah Dogood is now the Minister of Environment. Uh-huh. There we go. That's what I wanted to hear. Okay, that's who they've put him in there because he's a lot less controversial than Stephen Guilbeault. And that is what today is all about. So I'm not going to go to the bitter end, folks. I thank you for watching. What's going on here, though, I can't overemphasize this enough, is that this is Mark Carney trying to convince you that he's really not a Manchurian candidate, that he's really not a globalist, that he's really a good Canadian who played hockey a lot, grew up in the Northwest Territories, went to high school in Canada, really didn't do much else in Canada ever after that. Went to Harvard, went to Oxford, worked for the United Nations, WEF, Bank of England. Yeah, Bank of Canada, that's true. But he has been China's man for the last decade, since he was governor of the Bank of England. That's when he really started seeing himself as an advocate of Chinese supremacy, or China as being the hegemonic currency, or something else called a synthetic hegemonic currency that he's going to make up himself. And that's where we are with this man. So I think we're just about at the end of the ceremony. I'm just going to check in one last time here. And I thank you all for watching today. And I want Nathaniel Erskine Smith, who has one of the worst private members' bills, is staying on his housing. So I think we know the rest of it. The smaller cabinet, it's a less radical cabinet, but it's a cabinet designed to win another election for the Liberals, and they hope you don't notice what this is all about. So thank you so much for watching today. We're gonna say goodbye for now. I've got to get a story together on this. And there's no surprise here. It's exactly what I expected. This is Mark Carney doing his best to convince you he's not the Manchurian candidate. He's not the globalist. He's really your prime minister. But as so many of you pointed out in your comments today, no, he's not my prime minister. This guy was put in there by 150,000 Liberal Party members, 400,000 of whom in the larger party base were disqualified from voting. Something terribly wrong about that. Thank you so much for watching today. I'll be back again tomorrow with more of the news you need to know. And let's continue to resolve to resist.